Far beyond the quiet edges of the known galaxy, a distress signal flickered to life. It was weak, fading, and desperate. The message came from a small outpost on the planet Yalara 9, where a colony of peaceful traders had been attacked by something ancient and cruel. Their message carried a single line: "We request help. Anyone who can hear us." Then silence. When the signal reached the Galactic Council, most dismissed it. The planet was too remote, the attackers too powerful, and no one wanted to risk their fleets. But the signal did not stop there. It traveled farther, beyond neutral space, beyond the known empires, until it reached the hidden networks of the Deathworlders. No one knew how humans managed to survive on their world. Their home planet, Earth, was classified as a death world, a place so violent that even its air could kill the unprepared. But humanity thrived there, evolved through storms, beasts, and chaos. They had learned one lesson deeply: no call for help should ever be ignored. When the distress signal was decoded, the message spread like fire through human space. Within hours, war rooms lit up. The Terran High Command ordered a full alert. "Someone needs help," the Admiral said simply. "We respond." Across a dozen colonies, humans began to move. Dockyards roared to life, massive engines waking from silence. Old warships were pulled from orbit, refitted with speed and armor. Families stood on decks watching the fleets form. Silent but proud, they knew the unspoken rule: when one distress call was heard, thousands would answer. Aboard the flagship Indomitable, Captain Arlen watched the transmission replay on the holoscreen. The voice was trembling, terrified, alien. "Please, they're coming through the storm." Arlen turned to his crew. "Plot the course. Full jump in 3 minutes." His officers hesitated. "Sir, that's outside our patrol zone." Arlen's jaw tightened. "Doesn't matter." Someone asked for help. The engines ignited with a low thunder. The fleet stretched into the void, hundreds of ships forming into formation, their hulls reflecting the cold light of distant stars. What began as a single rescue mission soon drew in others. Civilian fleets joined. Mining convoys converted their cargo bays into med units. Even old freighters rearmed with cannons joined the march. News of the mobilization spread fast across the galaxy. Some alien governments watched in confusion, others in fear. Why would humans risk so much for strangers? One council member whispered. The answer came from a grizzled ambassador who had lived among them once. Because they don't understand the meaning of alone. Back on Yalara 9, the survivors huddled in the ruins of their city, listening to the thunder in the sky grow louder. The attackers, towering biomechanical creatures, prepared for the final strike. The ground trembled as their ships descended. Then through the dark clouds came a light, bright, white, and growing. The first Deathworlder fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Hundreds of human warships filled the orbit, their engines glowing like suns. A voice echoed through the comm channels, calm and unyielding. "This is the Terran Defense Armada. We received your call." The aliens on the ground looked up in disbelief as the night sky turned to fire. Human ships opened formation, creating a shield wall between Yalara 9 and the invaders. Beams of light tore through the darkness. The battle for the planet had begun, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered what it meant when humans answered a distress call. And this was only the beginning. The storm over Yalara 9 raged as human ships moved into position. The enemy fleet, an armada of dark insect-like vessels, began to reorganize. They had crushed worlds before, cold, efficient, merciless. But what they saw now made even their hardened commanders hesitate. Thousands of human ships stood in silence, lights glowing like distant suns waiting. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Arlen studied the enemy formation. "They're testing us," he said quietly. "They don't know what we are yet." His tactical officer replied, "Sir, the lead enemy ship is charging weapons." Arlen's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let them fire first." Moments later, a crimson beam sliced through space, striking a human frigate on the edge of the formation. The impact lit the void, but the ship held firm, shields flickering but not failing. The silence broke. "Return fire," Arlen ordered. Hundreds of human cannons roared at once. The black sky turned white as beams of plasma and railgun slugs streaked across space. The alien ships twisted and scattered, unprepared for such force. They expected hesitation, diplomatic calls, or fear. Instead, they met fury. Every Deathworlder ship fired with precision and purpose, their aim fueled by the shared promise that no one was left behind. Down on the surface, the colonists watched the heavens burn. Each explosion reflected off the clouds like a second sunrise. A young alien girl clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "Who are they?" The mother's voice trembled. The ones who came when no one else did. Inside the enemy command ship, panic spread. Their fleet numbers exceed predicted capacity. A general hissed. They respond like one mind. The commander slammed a clawed hand on the console. No species can unite this fast. It's impossible. But humans were never predictable. Across the fleet, old veterans fought alongside recruits barely out of training. Civilian pilots carried supply pods into the heart of battle. Even damaged ships refused to retreat. Every soul in that formation carried the same fire. The belief that if one called for help, all would come. On the Indomitable, Arlen's voice echoed through the comms. "They came for easy prey. Let's show them what humans do when someone's hunted." The crew smiled grimly. Targeting systems locked. Engines flared. The fleet advanced as one. The enemy tried to regroup, forming a wall of black ships. But humans didn't stop. They dove straight through, trading shield for speed, precision for chaos. The attackers were powerful, but they had never faced a species that fought like this, wild, creative, unyielding. Human ships rammed when guns overheated. Crews patched holes mid-battle. Medics turned cargo bays into emergency hospitals. The chaos became rhythm, and the rhythm became victory. Hours later, the alien flagship cracked apart. Fire spread across its hull. Its crew fled into escape pods, scattered like ash. Arlen watched silently as the enemy fleet began to retreat. "They're falling back," his officer confirmed. Arlen didn't cheer. He only gave one command. "Hold the line. Protect the survivors." As the last shots faded, Yalara 9 fell quiet. Wreckage floated like black snow across the night sky. The colonists emerged from their shelters, eyes wide with disbelief. Humans walked among them, helping the wounded, securing the ruins. No words were needed. The message was clear. Help had arrived. Yet even as they began to rebuild, distant sensors picked up something alarming. Another fleet, much larger, was on its way. The distress signal had reached more ears than anyone expected. The real enemy was coming. Captain Arlen looked at the glowing horizon. "Round 2, he muttered. "Let's see how many of us they can scare." Above the silent wreckage of the first battle, the sky still glowed from the fading embers. Human ships drifted quietly, their lights flickering against the endless black. But peace never lasted long on a Deathworlder mission. Deep scans had already detected movement, hundreds of new signatures pushing out of hyperspace. The first fleet had only been a scout wave. The real force was coming. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Arlen stared at the tactical map as more red markers appeared. The sensors couldn't even count them fast enough. "They're not retreating," whispered the communications officer. "They're calling for backup." Arlen's jaw tightened. "Then so are we." Across human space, long-range relays flared to life. The original distress signal had triggered the first wave, but now Arlen sent a coded transmission, a call known only among humans. It carried a single phrase: "Deathworlders respond." In less than an hour, the void filled again. Entire sectors mobilized. From mining colonies, from hidden fortresses, from distant moons, ships began to jump in. Some were sleek war cruisers, others old cargo haulers armed with improvised cannons. The second human wave was larger, louder, and far angrier. Meanwhile, the colonists below worked beside human soldiers, clearing rubble and treating the wounded. The young alien girl who had once whispered in fear now watched a human engineer repair a power core, with hands trembling from exhaustion, but steady with purpose. "Why do you fight for us?" she asked quietly. The man smiled faintly. "Because someone once fought for us." In orbit, the enemy armada emerged. Their ships formed dark clouds that blotted out the stars. The lead vessel was massive, its hull alive with crawling energy, its weapons glowing with red light. It broadcast a message across all channels: "Leave. This world belongs to us." Arlen didn't respond with words. Instead, he ordered, "Broadcast our answer." The humans sent their own message back, short and simple: "We don't leave anyone behind." The second battle began. The alien flagship unleashed a storm of plasma, shredding through human shields. Explosions painted the void with fire. But the Deathworlder fleets didn't break. Smaller ships darted through the chaos, targeting the enemy's weak points. Giant destroyers used their own wreckage as shields for others. Every explosion of a human vessel only made the next volley stronger. In one sector, 3 human carriers positioned themselves to protect evacuation transports. Their captains knew they wouldn't survive, yet they stayed. They fought until their reactors burned white. The enemy broke formation, confused by such reckless unity. No other species fought like this. So unpredictable, so emotional, so impossible to defeat without breaking their spirit first. As the hours passed, the tide began to turn again. Arlen's fleet pushed forward, coordinated through chaos. Pilots ignored orders to retreat, choosing instead to ram into enemy cruisers. Wreck after wreck fell from orbit like shooting stars. But amid the roaring victory, new readings appeared, something larger than any ship yet seen. The enemy's true flagship, the Hive Sovereign, emerged from hyperspace. Its size dwarfed everything in the battle, stretching like a mountain across the stars. Every system on the Indomitable flickered. The crew watched in silence as its shadow covered their fleet. Arlen stood still, then said quietly, "Tell the fleet to hold the line." No one spoke after that. Engines roared, weapons charged, and the humans once again prepared for the impossible. The distress signal that had started as a whisper was now a storm, and the galaxy was about to learn that when Deathworlders answered. They never stopped until the job was done. The Hive Sovereign loomed like a floating continent, its surface crawling with movement. Massive tendrils unfolded, each one pulsing with crimson energy. Every ship in its shadow seemed to tremble under its sheer presence. The human fleet looked impossibly small against it, but they didn't flinch. Inside the Indomitable, alarms blared. "They're charging main weapons," the tactical officer reported. The energy reading spiked so high that screens flickered. Captain Arlen stood still, watching the monster before them. "If that weapon fires," someone whispered, "it'll burn half the system." Arlen's voice was calm. "Then we move first." He ordered all ships to spread out in a spiral formation. Smaller frigates darted between the larger cruisers, creating layers of defense. Bombers launched in coordinated waves, disappearing into the black void between the fleets. Each one carried enough explosives to crack a moon. Their mission was simple: get close enough to hurt the Sovereign before it charged fully. In the cold silence of space, the first strike began. Swarms of bombers weaved through alien fire, shields glowing and fading. One by one, their signals vanished from the radar. But a few made it through. Explosions flared across the Sovereign's outer armor, tearing chunks of black metal free. The beast roared, an eerie, low vibration that shook every ship's hull. From the planet below, colonists watched as streaks of light carved through the sky. "Are they winning?" a young voice asked. The human medic tending to the wounded didn't look up. "They're holding. That's what matters." Back in orbit, the Sovereign retaliated. It unleashed a wave of energy that tore through space like a tsunami. Entire human squadrons vanished in the blinding light. The Indomitable shuddered violently. "Shields down to 20%. The engineer yelled. Arlen gripped the console to steady himself. "Reroute power from life support," he ordered. "If we die, it won't be because we ran out of air." The bridge was filled with smoke and static. Yet no one stopped. Every surviving ship pushed forward. The second wave of bombers launched, this time escorted by heavy destroyers. They flew directly into the storm. Human ingenuity began to shine, ships using debris as cover, creating decoys with broken drones, sacrificing systems to overload enemy sensors. The Sovereign's tendrils lashed out, cutting through ships like paper. Still, humans adapted. One destroyer, Iron Star, rammed a tendril head-on, detonating its reactor in a final blaze. The explosion crippled one of the beast's weapon arrays. A cheer went up across the comm channels. They did it. "The left arm is down!" Arlen didn't celebrate. His eyes remained on the tactical map where new signals appeared, reinforcements. Dozens of additional Deathworlder ships answering the universal call jumped into orbit. They came from colonies no one even remembered, battle-worn and patched together but ready to fight. The human fleet surged again, thousands strong now. Their firepower concentrated on the Sovereign's core. Plasma cannons roared, railguns screamed, and the giant began to falter. Its armor glowed red, melting under the combined assault. Then came the moment of silence before the end. The Indomitable drifted closer, too close. "Captain, if we stay this near, we'll be caught in the blast," the navigator warned. Arlen looked at the burning mass ahead and gave a faint smile. "Then we make sure it counts." The Indomitable fired its entire payload, torpedoes, railguns, missiles, everything at once. The Sovereign's heart erupted in light. A white flare consumed the battlefield, then faded into quiet darkness. When the light cleared, the great enemy ship was gone. In its place, only drifting fragments remained, glowing faintly like dying embers. The humans had won, but as the cheers filled the channels, distant sensors detected something else. Behind the wreckage, hidden deep in the void, thousands more red signals began to flicker awake. The war was far from over. The stars around Yalara 9 glimmered faintly through clouds of drifting debris. The silence after the battle felt unnatural, like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Human ships floated amid wreckage, engines dim, hulls scorched. Many were gone. Yet even in the quiet, no one dared relax. Every surviving captain knew what the sensors whispered. The enemy wasn't finished. Deep in the Indomitable's command deck, Captain Arlen leaned over the holomap. New red signals blinked at the edge of the system, spreading like blood through water. "That's not reinforcements," the science officer said quietly. "That's an entire armada," Arlen nodded grimly. "They're bringing everything." Across the fleet, comm channels came alive. Pilots, engineers, medics, all exhausted, wounded, and grieving, listened as Arlen's voice filled their ships. "We have no retreat left," he said calmly. "But we still have purpose." Yalara 9 called for help. We answered. "And until every survivor is safe, we don't stop." His tone carried no rage, only quiet resolve. For humans, that calm before battle was more frightening than any war cry. On the planet below, survivors built makeshift shelters. Alien children watched the sky, where streaks of red began to grow again. A soldier sat beside them, his armor cracked, his eyes tired. "Will they come back?" one asked. The soldier looked up at the sky and whispered, "Yes, but so will we." Hours later, space twisted. The enemy arrived, thousands upon thousands of black ships. Their formation blotted out the stars entirely. The remnants of the human fleet gathered, forming a wall between the planet and the darkness. Engines flared, weapons charged. For a brief moment, every human voice went silent, united in the same thought. "This is where we make our stand." The enemy commander spoke through the void, its voice echoing across all channels. "Your courage is meaningless. You are few." "We are endless," Arlen answered with one line. "You underestimate what few can do." Then the universe erupted. Beams of plasma and nuclear fire filled the void. Human destroyers darted between enemy lines, targeting weak spots. Every shot counted, every explosion deliberate. Even as ships fell, others moved to cover them. The Deathworlders fought not for glory, but for the lives behind them. One human battleship, the Resolute, took a direct hit. Its engines exploded, spinning it out of formation. Instead of abandoning ship, its captain turned it toward the enemy's center. "If we're going down," she said, "we'll take a few with us." The Resolute rammed into 3 enemy cruisers, detonating in a blinding flash that tore open the enemy's flank. From that chaos, the fleet found its chance. Arlen's voice broke through the static. "Push forward. Hit their command node." The Indomitable led the charge, weaving through fire, its armor melting under pressure. Fighters flew close beside it, protecting their captain like loyal wolves. Inside one of the enemy ships, alien officers screamed as their systems failed. Human boarding pods smashed through their hull, spilling soldiers in metal suits. They fought in corridors filled with smoke and sparks, every strike brutal and fast. Even surrounded humans pressed on, fighting like the gravity of Earth still lived inside their bones. On Yalara 9, the colonists saw the night sky turn to fire again. But this time it wasn't fear they felt, it was hope. They saw the shapes of human ships still burning forward through impossible odds. In orbit, the battle reached a fever pitch. The enemy's numbers still seemed infinite, but their formation was breaking. Arlen saw the cracks and seized them. "All ships," he ordered, "form the death line. Burn everything you have left." The human fleet aligned, their weapons synchronizing into one colossal strike. The combined blast ripped through the center of the enemy armada. When the light faded, thousands of enemy ships were gone. But so were hundreds of human ones. Silence followed again, broken only by the flicker of distant red signals still multiplying in the dark. The humans had won the battle. But the war was beginning to look endless. The human fleet was scattered but not defeated. The void was filled with broken hulls and drifting bodies of ships that once stood proud. Yet amid the silence, engines began to flicker back to life. One by one, the surviving vessels reactivated, their lights glowing like tiny embers refusing to die out. Inside the Indomitable, Captain Arlen stood at the cracked window of the command bridge. The ship's systems were failing, oxygen levels low, power fluctuating. His reflection looked worn and ghostly, but his eyes still burned with the same fire that had brought them this far. "Status?" he asked. The officer hesitated before answering. "Less than a third of our fleet remains operational, sir. Reinforcements haven't responded yet." Arlen nodded slowly. "Then we hold with what we have." As repair crews worked in silence, a faint signal pulsed through the static. A new message, encrypted with an old Earth military code. Arlen's heart skipped. He ordered the transmission opened. The voice that came through was rough, tired, and human. "This is Commander Reyes of the 7th Deathworlder Wing. We received your signal." "We're coming in hot." The bridge erupted in cheers. For the first time in days, hope filled the air. Moments later, hyperspace ripples appeared across the stars and massive warships burst into real space, each bearing the insignia of Earth's oldest fleets. They were old, battle-scarred, but heavily armed. They had come from far beyond the colonies, from the deep Deathworld sectors where humanity had hidden its most powerful weapons. As Reyes's fleet joined formation, Arlen opened a secure channel. "You're late," Reyes chuckled. "You're alive. That's all that matters. Let's finish this." Below, Yalara 9 survivors watched the new ships arrive, their silver hulls shining like dawn breaking through endless night. The alien children pointed to the sky, cheering as the familiar glow of human engines lit up the clouds again. The colonists began to rebuild faster, inspired by the sight of their protectors refusing to fall. But deep within the void, the enemy wasn't idle. From the ashes of their destroyed fleets, a new formation emerged. Smaller ships, faster, more adaptive. They had studied human tactics during every battle, learning how Deathworlders fought, how they sacrificed, how they endured. This new fleet moved differently, unpredictable, almost human in its aggression. When the first wave struck, it hit hard. Human scanners barely detected them before impact. They came from all sides, striking supply ships and communication relays. The humans fought back, but the enemy's new tactics forced them into disarray. Arlen clenched his fists as reports flooded in, ships vanishing, carriers burning, rescue teams cut off. Commander Reyes ordered countermeasures, sending stealth units to flank the attackers. "They're copying us," he said grimly. "They've learned from every move we made." Arlen replied, "Then we'll teach them something they can't copy." He ordered a maneuver known among humans as the Gauntlet. Every ship formed into a narrow wedge, focusing all firepower through a single corridor of space. The formation moved forward relentlessly, burning through enemy lines, pushing them toward the gravitational pull of Yalara's twin moons. The enemy, caught between gravity and fury, began to collapse. Human ships weaved through the wreckage, guns blazing. "Push them back!" Arlen shouted. The crew obeyed, even as alarms blared and hulls cracked. When the last enemy cruiser exploded, silence returned again, deeper than before. The fleet hung in space, battered but alive. Arlen looked out at the ruined sky and whispered, "They're learning. And so are we." Behind the calm, though, a new reading flickered across the sensors, a colossal energy signature forming deep within enemy space. It wasn't another fleet. It was something worse, something ancient awakening. And this time even Arlen could feel the cold weight of fear. The stars pulsed unnaturally as the new energy reading grew stronger. It wasn't a fleet, it was a single entity. Massive gravitational waves rippled across the system, bending light and space. The debris from the last battle began to drift toward a single point, pulled by invisible force. Every sensor aboard the Indomitable screamed warnings. Captain Arlen stood motionless, eyes fixed on the holographic display. "That can't be natural," whispered the science officer. "It's alive." The readings confirmed it. The enemy had not just sent ships. They had awakened something older, something buried beneath the dark layers of their homeworlds. A living war machine the size of a moon. The humans had seen horrors before, but this was different. The entity was pulling power from the wreckage, absorbing both metal and energy, rebuilding itself from the remains of the fallen. Its form took shape, a vast structure of bone and alloy, glowing with rivers of red light. Arlen activated the fleet-wide channel. Everyone, listen carefully. We are staring at the weapon that ended worlds long before us. If we fall here, Yallara burns and the galaxy will follow. His voice didn't shake, though the weight of it pressed down on every soul who heard him. Commander Reyes responded from his ship. Vigilant dawn. Then we don't fall, Arlen, not here. The entity released a low-frequency hum that shattered communications. Ships trembled. Smaller vessels were dragged toward it, crushed like paper. Arlen's crew worked frantically to stabilize the Indomitable. The helmsman yelled, "We can't outrun that pull." Arlen gave a slow, grim smile. Then we don't run. We go through it. His officers looked at him in disbelief. "Through it, sir." "Yes," he said. "We overload our drives, channel the energy forward, and burn through its core. If this thing eats wreckage, we'll make sure it chokes." The order went out. Every ship still operational began rerouting their remaining power. Lights dimmed, life support shut down, shields dropped. The fleet moved together, hundreds of ships glowing brighter and brighter until they looked like falling stars. The creature sensed the buildup and began to charge a counterattack. Energy arcs spread from its body, forming spirals of plasma. Dozens of human ships vanished instantly, but the rest pressed on. Every pilot knew what this meant. There would be no second chance. The Indomitable led the charge, engines burning white-hot. "Target the heart," Arlen commanded. "On my mark." The creature's core pulsed like a beating heart. A storm of red lightning wrapped around it. The fleet broke formation, diving straight toward it. Reyes's voice came through one last time. "For Earth." Arlen replied softly. "For everyone." The first impact hit like a sun exploding. The Indomitable's entire payload detonated at once, followed by the rest of the fleet. The shockwave tore through space, folding energy into itself. The creature screamed, a sound that rattled the void itself. Its massive frame cracked apart, fragments burning into stardust. For a moment there was nothing but light, blinding, endless light. Then silence. Hours later, survivors aboard drifting escape pods awoke to find the void still and clear. The planet below was safe. The enemy fleets were gone. Only pieces of the great creature remained, now lifeless rock drifting through the stars. Among the survivors, a whisper spread. The Deathworlders had done the impossible. One distress signal had brought thousands, and thousands had become a legend. When the story reached the rest of the galaxy, no one dared ignore a call for help again. Because everyone remembered what happened the last time someone cried out in the dark, and the Deathworlders answered.